as we have known and practiced for many decades since the advent of WTO, is in a shambles. We do not know what is happening with the WTO.
The failures of the WTO to act or rise up to the occasion is largely due to the successive American administrations. Only thing is that Trump has been doing it rather nakedly and is all out to, undermine is an understatement, wreck the system. What India could have done is to hold its cards close to its chest, in which it should have first taken when it saw that there is no meaning in taking up any issue at the WTO at this juncture because nothing can be resolved there. You should have at least retaliated, showed your strength. You are a 1.4 billion people and you have a huge market, you have a huge middle class. So obviously you also have some good cards in your in your pocket. Today, even if the Americans reduce the 26% tariff to somewhere around 17 to 18%, even that is a big hit for India because you are already paying what are called the sectoral tariffs, 50% on steel and aluminium. Why do we need high tariffs or some level of tariffs? Because we need to protect the market as well as develop our own local domestic industries. I generally feel that we are unlikely to get a deal which will help us, a deal in which we give much more market access, a deal in which we ensure that our 44 billion trade surplus is reduced to some 20 or even below 20 billion, a deal that will severely affect India's core industries like steel, aluminium and all, a deal that will definitely undermine India's agriculture.
Hello and welcome to this special discussion on what is happening with world trade today. As we all know, governments around the world have been on tenterhooks for the last many months dealing with Trump tariffs. Donald Trump's ascendancy as president of United States has literally thrown a cat among the pigeons, and the rule-based trade, world trade, as we have known and practiced for many decades since the advent of WTO, is in a shambles. We do not know what is happening with the WTO. On the one hand, which was, as we all know, was sponsored by the West, particularly the US. US was the biggest sponsor and undertaker of the WTO as a multilateral institution. Today, WTO is in the ICU, if you will, and we don't know what is going on with all the rules under which trading was being done. Parallelly, we have Donald Trump and his team going around the world with a wrecking ball and announcing tariffs, withdrawing tariffs, announcing again, negotiating, giving deadlines. The last deadline given by Trump is August 1. Most likely, India will not have any agreement by August 1. And there is speculation that the 26% tariff originally put on India will kick in from August 1. Even while an interim agreement will be negotiated with the Indian government. Other countries are in a similar position, major trading partners of the US. So today, we will discuss this very critical issue, which has a bearing on people around the world. It has a bearing on employment. It has a bearing on economic growth. It has a bearing on income growth. It has a bearing on inflation. So, in a nutshell, we are going to discuss how global trade will pan out in the next few months, and how WTO, which is already as I said, in the ICU, what will be the fate of WTO? Now, these are two sides of the same coin. To discuss this, we have with us D. Ravikanth, who is a trade analyst based out of Geneva, and he has been covering the WTO and analyzing WTO for various trade journals abroad, and writing for Indian publications like The Wire regularly. And Ravikanth is, I would say, a very ideally placed to from Geneva to understand what is going on with global trade. And you may recall that one important agreement that US or negotiation that US conducted with China also happened in Geneva. So Ravikant, welcome to our show. We are happy that you're sitting in Geneva and have a vantage view. You're at a vantage point where you can see what is going on. So to start with, just tell us what is your sense about what is happening in regard to both the way Trump tariffs and negotiations are progressing, and the way WTO is progressively getting undermined. To begin with, what is the state of WTO? Since that has a big impact on what's going on the other side.
Uh, Thank you, Venu. Thank you very much. It's 9 o'clock here in Geneva. As we discussed this, and as you have rightly raised a lot of issues, uh, today is the day when the WTO is going to have what is called the General Council meeting. The General Council meeting is the highest body during the biennial ministerial conferences. So you have a lot of issues on the plate. You're right that it's placed in a kind of an ICU at this point of time. It's a multi-organ failure for WTO because we are witnessing what are called the historic high tariffs never witnessed since 1948, where 80 for the past 80 years, starting with GATT in 1948 and different rounds of negotiations, the last being the Uruguay round. So never you had witnessed a situation in which a country is forcing left, right, center, almost every country, somewhat extortionally, because most of their actions are illegal even within the US trade law. There are, as we speak today, there's a case that has been launched in Texas yesterday against the Trump's use of, what are called unilateral, somewhat illegal, tariffs on countries. He is using three main provisions of the U.S. Code. One is the IEEPA, International Emergency Economic Powers Act, which
You need
has
not go
never
into
been.
detail. Just tell us the gist of
Yeah.
what is going on.
So as we meet, the WTO is facing, as I said, multi-pronged attack on several fronts. It is more or less unable to rise to the occasion of these tariffs. And it has actually not spoken, even the Director General now does not speak about the reciprocal tariffs. So today, it's struggling for survival. Even if it survives, there is no guarantee that it would act as a guarantor of all the legal provisions and all. So the world is really going to face a very ugly moment. The ugly moment being they are helpless, unable to stand up. Each country is forced to find its own, ways of settling things, except two countries rather. China, for example, has retaliated significantly, and even Canada retaliated. And today we hear that the EU is in a spot. So within the EU, there is a thinking that they should retaliate. Coming days and months and years are so completely upended. The entire trade system that we have got used to, starting with GATT, and then from 1995, the World Trade Organization, which has ensured that, largely ensured, there have been some failures and here and there. In fact, the failures of the WTO to act or rise up to the occasion is largely due to the successive American administrations. Only thing is that Trump has been doing it rather nakedly and is all out to, undermine is an understatement, wreck the system and bring it to level it all together as they are doing, say, for example, in Gaza, where
Yeah.
they have destroyed everything,
Yeah.
brought
So,
together.
Ravikant, let's keep our focus on on trade. Gaza, of course, is a completely different subject, outrageous as it is. Uh, so, so in what way, Ravikant, are uh, countries like you just said? You made an interesting point that China is one country which has resisted Trump's attempts to impose an agreement on them, and they have negotiated a deal where China has forced the United States also to open up, export of, for instance, semiconductor chip software design software to China, and they managed to sort of push back substantially and managed to get a lot out of Trump. Do you see India getting something out of Trump? What is the state of India-US negotiations so far, and is India in
So,
what ways? Uh, in what ways do you think India can resist, or does India have uh, any negotiation, leverage as China had? China has leverage in terms of, its rare earth magnet control around the world, 90% of processing of rare earth magnets and other rare earth minerals. What what can India do? This is a big worry, and and everybody here in India, the industry is speculating as to what will happen. How will the trade agreement with the US affect various sectors in India? What is your sense? The agriculture sector, for instance.
yeah,
What's your
yeah,
sense?
yeah. First, one or two words about how these, process evolved. For example, how China and India behaved right from the day when he made these announcements. China, in no uncertain terms, made it very clear that it will retaliate measure for measure. While India, at that point of time, instead of sort of exploring within the domestic constituencies how to go about, openly declared and embracing the Trump administration and showing its hand.
Yeah,
China held two rounds of negotiations, one in Geneva, where they have substantially brought down the tariffs from a very high of 145% to around 25%, while India, did not retaliate. I mean, at a time when the WTO is more or less dysfunctional, what India could have done is to hold its cards close to its chest, in which it should have first taken when it saw that there is no meaning in taking up any issue at the WTO at this juncture because nothing can be resolved there. You should have at least retaliated, showed your strength. You are a 1.4 billion people and you have a huge market, you have a huge middle class. So obviously you also have some good cards in your in your pocket. But how do you utilize them is the question. First and foremost, India should have remained silent, not showed this kind of open, bear hug embraces, embracing the US. Second, India should have forced the US to enter into consultations with itself instead of India rushing to Washington time and time again.
Yeah.
Third, it should have very clearly sort of displayed its card that how important it is in the Asia region. It's
Yeah.
whether we like it or not. After China, India is a regional power, though the Narendra Modi government has substantially undermined all the immediate regional players and relations with them. That's a different story altogether. So India could have played several cards, but the way we have bungled and created a fiasco of unmitigated proportions is that you jumped into their bogey first. You said we will negotiate with them, we will arrive at an interim agreement, and that interim agreement will be followed by a final agreement, and that final agreement will achieve 500 billion trade turnover. Now, all these are completely, you have weakened day every day by stating this. First and foremost, you should have clearly examined what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses,
Yeah.
and then showed the courage for at least temporarily that you would retaliate, at least
Yeah.
make that announcement. Like the European Union, on the second day when the Trump announced all this on the April 2nd and April 4th, they
Yeah.
immediately said that we will retaliate too. They kept 18 billion of retaliatory duties in pocket. They kept stating that.
Yeah.
Though then Trump said, I'll hike up the tariffs to 50% and things like that. India did not do any of those things.
To some
India,
extent, Ravi, just here. To some extent, even Japan has been resisting, right? Japan is
yeah,
not agreeing to the
every
tariffs that the
country,
US is trying to impose on them, right?
yeah, every country is resisting. Japan is resisting. Korea is resisting. Canada is resisting. Even Mexico also said it will resist. So how
But
does it
now,
all?
Ravi, off late, last week, you're right. India prematurely went into a big hug with Trump, and we all know that that Modi visit, where he was subjected to that meeting with Elon Musk with his family and the nannies and the children. It was a big disaster, and we got nothing from that visit by Prime Minister Modi except public insults, as you saw in front of the media, where he kept calling India, big tariff violator, tariff king, difficult to do business in India. Now, since then, we've been swallowing insult after insult, publicly delivered by Trump. And as we are approaching August 1, we are hearing some murmurs now, belatedly, that India, from the Indian side, that we will not compromise on some of our core issues, like agriculture, etc., or intellectual property rights, or a few other issues, very critical to India's growth. Data localization, for instance, which is important for India's, digital economy and digital vision. Uh, so, given this background, that the belated, what we see, some belated pushback coming. Uh, Only yesterday, the petroleum minister, day before, made a statement that the fresh sanctions on Russia by EU on Russian oil, that uh, India will not observe, or India will not observe those sanctions, or will not follow those sanctions, and will continue to buy oil from Russia uh, at the same level as before, which is about 36% of our total oil is now imported from Russia. So, do you see some belated kind of resistance coming from India, seeing that the
Yeah,
situation is now it's seeing that there's nothing really fructifying from their uh, relationship with the United States?
Yeah, I think I mean, there are several issues that are now suddenly compelling them, forcing them to, have a serious rethink. This rethink ought to have happened on the day one, but more
Yeah,
than that, that today, even if the Americans reduce the 26% tariff to somewhere around 17 to 18%, even that is a big hit for India because you are already paying what are called the sectoral tariffs, 50% on steel and aluminum, 25% and on autos and auto parts, and more tariffs are coming on pharmaceuticals and even other issues of concern to you. So how
yeah,
would you develop? I mean, this whole tariffs, why do we need high tariffs or some level of tariffs? Because we need to protect the market as well as develop our own local domestic industries.
yeah.
So the tariff offers a level of protection. Now, Donald Trump is raising tariffs because he wants to create an industry within the US. He
And
also,
he wants other countries to do zero tariffs so that US
yeah,
can come
exactly.
at zero duty. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So, for example, he did a deal with the Vietnamese where he gave them that their goods will be subjected to 20% tariffs,
yeah,
while American goods to Vietnam will have zero tariffs. And
yeah,
on the top of that, he also announced what is called the transshipment tariff,
yeah,
wherein Vietnamese, which are the sort of the haven for all the Chinese companies, they'll be subjected to 40% tariff. So, I mean, the moral of the story is this tariffs have a very severe, serious impact on your sector, on your domestic sectors at a time when India is wanting to grow and become a bigger player.
yeah.
You are cutting, shooting yourself in the foot by daily making this. We have concerns here, this kind of namby pamby concerns that they keep raising. These are
Yeah.
very serious concerns which had to be structured into your negotiating position, and that negotiating position normally ought to be sort of revealed uh, only when everything is sort of failed. You did not retaliate. You are making this kind of public statements in the Indian media that we took up the matter to the WTO asking for its approval. That's complete nonsense because India knows that WTO cannot do anything.
Now that,
When it
yeah, Ravi, you just spoke about WTO. I'm curious to know. You're sitting in WTO. You've been covering WTO for now almost more than 2 decades, sitting in Geneva, and you know the innards of WTO and how it works. Can you just give us an idea as to what is the Indian representative doing in WTO? I mean, you just said that the DG is not talking there. Are they sort of communicating with the media? Are they telling people? Are they speaking frankly about what Trump is doing, the wrecking ball that Trump is taking to, to world trade to various countries? What is going on inside WTO? Please tell us, even if it is in the ICU. We know, as you
Yeah,
said.
see,
I also,
inside the WTO now, what the lady, the Director General, her name is Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. She is a dual citizen of Nigeria and United States.
okay.
So, in the face of the assault from the Trump administration, she has suddenly switched her positions. The other day, that was about 15th of
Switch
July.
that position in what way? Yeah. Yeah.
So, and that is what I'm coming to. Instead of raising the red flag every day in and day out, on Wednesday, that is on 15th of July, she says the members should all receptively accept some of the reforms which the Americans are asking. When the
So
patient
she
has already, I mean,
she's undermining WTO itself, is it?
itself. And what
Yeah.
are these reforms? The Americans have always been asking the WTO to be radically reformed. And what are these reforms? They want to do away with what is called the consensus principle, which is
Yeah.
the mainstay for developing countries, because they also then have a voice to object or stop a particular agreement if they feel it is not reasonable to their interests. She
See
wants
here,
to.
Ravi, just pause for a second. I want I want you to explain to the viewers what is this consensus principle.
So, W.
Simply put, consensus principle. It does it mean that everybody has to agree to something, or there
So
is no agreement? Even if
as part of,
one person says no, then it falls through, right? Hmm?
yeah, basically, as part of the WTO agreement, in fact, to be very precise, Article 9 of the Marrakesh Agreement, it says the decisions in WTO will be taken on the basis of consensus of all members. So if one or two or even three say we are going to not allow consensus on this, they have every right, and they must definitely state their goals, whether whatever their goals. So the
Okay.
Americans, for example, blocked what is called the creation, the filling of vacancies to the appellate body. Just
Yeah.
one member is blocking when the rest of the membership wants the appellate body to be restored.
Okay.
So the consensus principle actually allows, whether you are small or big, or whether your share in the global trade is
So you're saying one
1% of.
country can block a move. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, India, for example, today is the lady is accusing India without naming India. India is
You're talking
blocked.
about the DG, the DG. Yeah. Hmm.
DG, correct. The Director General, in her
Yeah.
latest speech at the Trade Negotiations Committee meeting,
Yeah.
she one country. She keeps saying one country, pointing
Hmm.
finger at India,
Yeah.
because India is blocking two agreements right now. One
Hmm.
is called the Fishery Subsidies Second Agreement,
Okay.
and then what is the second agreement being the investment facilitation development for agreement, which is a Chinese move, though it has support, but it's an illegal agreement, because
Yeah.
you have never, in order to get an issue negotiated, you have to have go through the normal legal process, which they
Yeah.
did not do. So it is, she's constantly hammering one country is blocking. If one country does not do this, then we will have an agreement on second phase. We'll have an agreement on IFDA, that is investment facilitation for development.
But
So,
does she, Ravi? Does she? Can I just? I want to come in on one question here. Does she do the same for? Does she refer to America as one country blocking revival of the appellate authority, appellate body?
no,
Does she do that?
you're right in asking that question. She doesn't raise a finger when the
Okay.
US is constantly blocking the very core function of the WTO. WTO has three functions. One is
Yeah.
called the negotiating function, which means you negotiate new agreements. The second function is called the enforcement function, that
Yeah.
agreements that have been reached and agreed have to be implemented. Suppose if a
Yeah.
country doesn't implement, then
Yeah.
the appellate body or the judicial process, adjudicating process, can put the hammer on their head and you
Yeah.
bloody well implement this agreement.
Yeah.
So that is now undermined by the Americans. The third is the implementation. I mean, this is a secretariat related issue where how you implement, you basically coordinate or cooperate with the members to
Yeah.
implement agreements. So these three in one function is dead. Because of the death of one function, the WTO today is unable to say anything. I mean, I'll give you another example.
So you were
Yesterday,
Ravikant here. Let me just to sort of explain this very simply to the viewer. The appellate authority of WTO, appellate body, eh, would you say it is the heart of the WTO function, overall WTO function? Huh?
yeah, it's part of what is called the enforcement of
Yeah.
rule agreements.
Yeah. So it
It's
is the heart. It is, in a way, it is the
when
heart of the function. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when it was actually conceived, it is the Americans who brought this. Namely,
Yeah.
Americans wanted the WTO rulings on implementation of agreements should be binding on countries. It is
Correct.
they, because they faced a problem with the European Union in GATT,
Yeah.
where European Union will block and nothing could be done. So, in order to overcome this tension, they brought the appellate
So
body.
yeah. So Americans brought it, and now Americans
And
are
they're the
undermining
ones
it.
who are killing it. And they're
Yeah.
saying that their new ambassador, who's going to join very soon, he's already told the Senate that, look, our rules, our decisions will be paramount, and they take precedence over the WTO agreements. So
Okay.
it's the Americans who wrecked it. It was actually called the jewel in the crown. This whole binding dispute settlement body, particularly the appellate body,
So
was
yeah.
at the time of when it was, because I was, as a young rookie reporter, I used to think that it could now stop this, it could stop that, and things like that. But it is the US which started chipping away at that whole, adjudicating process, starting with the Trump, Bush Jr., followed by Clinton, followed
Yeah.
by, so, but Donald Trump has done the worst of all. He said, no, I'm not going to, go to the WTO to sort of implement my decisions. I'll do
Okay.
it. You.
Yeah. I got your point, Ravi. Now, so finally, in one sentence, you are suggesting that US, of course, is undermining WTO. As you said, that about that there is no doubt. Because US in the last 10, 15 years are losing out to China and losing out to other countries in world trade, other Asian economies, etc. That's why he has brought the Trump tariffs. But to me, the important point is, as you rightly said, even the head of WTO, DG, instead of disciplining the US, it
Yeah.
is she the WTO DG is soft towards the Trump
Not just
regime.
soft.
That
She
that's a,
doesn't
that,
get.
that, that, that that comes to me as a surprise. Yeah, yeah,
No, no, she's. I mean, remaining soft is one thing, but she doesn't. She can't even remain soft. I mean, she's not remaining soft. She's openly encouraging and promoting the American agenda, despite the US having wrecked the entire multilateral trading system,
trading
the
system. Yeah,
WTO
yeah.
processes. So here, for example, she went and quietly
And
had
what
a
is
meeting with
Here,
the.
let me. So, so how is the Indian representative there responding to this? Is the Indian representative, which is typically normally an IS officer,
Yeah.
is he or she recording India's protest?
I mean, India has had a very glorious tradition of having some of the best ambassadors to this organization.
Yeah,
And they were seen not by, every developing country looked up to them to also help them address some of the issues in which India also has the same concerns.
yeah,
But today, unfortunately, we have here is an ambassador. He's personally a good guy, but he has no knowledge, institutional history of this organization. He's straight drafted from Uttar Pradesh to into this organization. He's come straight from Uttar Pradesh. He never held any stint within the Commerce Ministry or any experience with trade issues. He's a good man, but he's completely. I mean, it's talked all over the town.
no,
He
no,
is.
not. You're saying not suited to the job. That's what you're saying, right? Mm-hmm.
I mean, I leave it to you. In fact, the
No, no,
whole system has
Ravi. This is not about the individual, Ravi. This is about. I'm sorry.
the system.
It's
Correct.
about the government.
Absolutely.
Is the Indian government taking a position? We cannot blame the official because the official is merely taking orders.
No, I mean
Is
that
the
is
Indian
one
government
thing.
taking a position against? As you
No,
said, as you opened in your opening remarks, you said India went and prematurely, uh, hugged US prematurely started giving concessions to US. Given that situation, why would India within WTO raise its voice against the US? So
No,
the Indian representative must be going along with the WTO DG of WTO, isn't it?
yeah, I mean, in fact, that is the saddest thing. The Indian Commerce Minister constantly makes daily one statement here, one statement there. But when it comes to, pointing the finger at the WTO against the US, India has been more or less dead or silent, I would say. It has not, for example, China has been constantly hammering the Americans on this reciprocal tariffs,
Yeah.
constantly. Even other countries were hammering. But of late, I see, of course, China also is sort of remaining silent because it has
So
stuck to
China has got
many.
a deal. China is silent because it has got a good deal with the US, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I remember, last year, some years ago, I don't want to quote the senior Chinese official who told me that if Donald Trump comes, it will be good for the US as compared to the Biden administration. Because with Donald Trump,
You
we
know,
can
it'll
strike.
be good for China, you're saying. It'll be good for China.
Yeah. Good for China. We can strike deals.
Yeah.
So, despite today, the China, I mean, all credit goes to them. How they have completely, eclipsed Donald Trump, because they're not only able to get the. You mentioned about the semiconductors, the NVIDIA's critical, crucial AI chips, which
Mhm.
are vital for the explosion that is taking place in China AI industry with that
Yeah.
after the deep sea and before the deep sea. Today, China
Yeah.
is almost equal player to the US in the global AI competition. In fact,
Yeah.
it may have advanced in some areas of AI well much more than the US. So it's
Yeah.
a tension.
Ravikant, are you suggesting that there is some kind of informal G2 happening between US and China on future tech trade, tech investments?
Yeah, it's possible because if you remember the Biden's chief national security advisor, his whole argument is that we will have a small garden with high boundary walls, and
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
those small garden we will ensure areas of critical interest to us. So
Yeah.
those are AI, semiconductors,
Yeah.
this,
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah. Yeah.
then what the Biden administration did was that they went on a sanction spree,
Yeah.
export sanctions against China. They
Yeah.
virtually almost throttled China
Yeah.
from having any secondary access also from other international companies.
Yeah.
Then came Donald Trump, and Donald Trump actually is going against the China hawks in a big way in the US Senate and Congress.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when he is sort of because of he's realized that he cannot have a successful presidency second term without China's help.
Yeah.
I mean, could you imagine when we were going and begging President Trump to meet Narendra Modi? I mean, the kind of lobbying India
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
Huh? Could you imagine about 10 days ago, the American Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, meeting the Chinese foreign minister in Kuala Lumpur and to set up the interview for Trump to go to set up the venue and the arrangements for Trump to go to China.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I read it. I read in the news. Trump was visiting China
So that, yeah,
in a few months. So that
that
shows.
basically
Yeah,
shows
that
only
yeah.
you right to say that today there are only G2 country. I mean, G2 is a correct characterization of the current international climate in which the rest, even the European Union, doesn't have the kind of say which the Chinese have. And they remarkably conducted their trade policy. They have
So coming,
realized.
Ravi. So we know how China has managed to tame Trump, if that is the right term. Now, let's come back to India. What do you expect will happen with India? I mean, where are we headed? Where are we headed in terms of, Trump has done a deal with China. China is willing to, is sending, rare earth magnets, suddenly opened up exports. And I saw this data in June. There is a 600% increase in exports of rare earth magnets to US from China. 600% increase month to month, increase. So,
Yes.
and Indian industry here is waiting for rare earth magnets. They have some inventory, but they whether it's Tata, Bajaj, the entire auto sector, really very worried as to how the immediate short term, next 6 months, 1 year will pan out. Uh, uh, and
Yeah.
the Chinese are also threatening India with you know with controlling, with export controls on very important fertilizers and chemicals, which may have a bearing on India's food production, especially in vegetables, etc. And China has also stopped export of important engineering equipment into India. So have we in some ways bungled our economic relations with China?
I think you hit the, nerve. You're right. This is what happens when you foolishly play all your keep your dependence and play all your cards in one particular bag. I mean, for example, you should have been circumspect and careful to have a balanced relationship, the strategically balanced with China and the US. You believe that US will do everything for you and will come to your rescue. Not knowing that US has not had that historical track record of helping India in a way that
In
this
fact,
current
in fact,
government.
Ravi, what you're saying was said by Jeffrey Sachs, had visited India about a few months ago. He had a
Yeah,
meeting with Jaishankar, foreign minister,
yeah, yeah.
and Jeffrey Sachs made precisely this point, that do
I
not
see. I didn't know.
100% trust the
Yeah,
Trump administration.
nobody does. I mean,
And
today you
he
are.
said that if you think you will get a trade agreement very soon, you're mistaken. It will
No,
the trade
yeah,
agreement that you want will not happen. Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, today the Americans are not going to give you any sweet deal on trade. It's historically, if you read the American history of trade policies starting from 1786, they've been cutthroat in their demands. There's no, sort of kind of hidden kind of goals. They're straight. They're nakedly straight. Sometimes, some not some so sometimes, but they will always extract an extra pound of flesh from you time and time again. Why did you do this? Why should you have not been more circumspect in having good relations with, say, China, or even with the other countries, instead of throwing all your eggs into the American basket? And today, see the kind of damaging statements Donald Trump makes. Can he make one such statement against China? So you
Also, Ravikant,
ought to have it. And
it's also very
so you
interesting,
haven't.
Ravi, that it's also very interesting, Ravi, that uh, many Indian analysts who have been closely working with the government, also in some ways they reflect the government's opinion. They, for all these years, they they had only uh, one line, or one view, which is you stay with America. America will underwrite both security and economic growth for you. Today, those analysts, senior analysts, are saying, I'll name one. C. Rajamohan, has been writing in the Express for so many years. His last article says that there's a need to de-risk from US. So even they have now complete. they've turned around to the other to the opposite view that India needs to de-risk
Yeah,
from the US. And Rajamohan
yeah.
also
How is
he also wrote another piece. I'm quoting him because he's taken seriously, uh, where he
yeah.
talked about India-EU relationship, where his last line in that article was, India and EU have a task cut out because America is looking inward and is unpredictable. The word used unpredictable. And recently, Jaishankar, foreign minister, went to Beijing,
China?
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
China. There are signals coming, though belatedly, that India may be willing to start hedging its bets and start de-risking, uh, from US. De-risking its relationship with US, or
Yeah.
de-risking from US. If not decoupling, de-risking from US. So how do you view
De-risking.
that?
Yeah, this is the word. Actually, it's interesting, some of these analysts who are today, singing a different song altogether, were the ones who created the anti-China hatred. If you remember their columns when Biden was there and around the time that China is the problem, China is the problem. We have to sort of
Yeah.
go with the US full hog. And today they realize because the Biden administration gone, Trump brought an anarchic, an anarchy into the system. The same guys lost, their proximity to the kind of officials that were there in the US. So today they're, of course, suddenly asking for de-risking and all. Why did you not put that same slogan when this, when you urged India to go very close, follow them, sort of somewhat fawningly. So I'm not surprised. In fact, when Jaishankar went to China, he I mean, I don't know what happened, what transpired, but it's a clear signal that we are here to mend our relations and improve them. And, please, because he knows the kind of tensions the industry is facing today. Because China also doesn't rest, sort of trust. The element of trust is so critical and crucial in international
True.
relations. And now,
And I remember Ravila. I think sometime last year,
yeah,
or early last year, or maybe before that, the famous, or it was it to 2023. There was a famous statement by Jaishankar, uh, when he said that the world has a China problem, to which the Chinese responded via an article in Global Times, the Chinese newspaper, that that India China relations has a Jaishankar problem.
no, it's
So,
possible. We've been,
in a way, it's interesting that the irony is that Jaishankar year and a half ago said the world has a China problem, but today it is so clear that the world has a US problem, right? Because China is
yeah,
negotiating deals with almost every other country in the world.
yeah,
Whether it's
absolutely.
Africa,
And
China recently allowed Africa to push in export zero duty at zero
yeah,
duty to
market
China.
access. Yes.
It is
Yeah,
freshly creating deepening, strengthening relations with Japan, with
yeah,
Australia, which are Quad countries, by the way, and with
yeah,
South Korea, with East Asia, with Latin
yeah,
America.
yeah.
I think it's the tables have completely turned. It would appear.
They're in the process of being turned, but you are absolutely right that China has been a key catalyzing agent in South-South trade relations. It
Yeah,
has expanded its and enhanced its trade relations with all the African countries through, various physical asset creations, whether in African countries or even in the Central Asian countries. So that is one aspect. The second aspect is the ASEAN countries, including Singapore, Malaysia, all these big ones. They look up to China because they feel that China is a much more stable and trustworthy partner than the constant changes that undergo in Washington. So we are in a situation that very soon I won't be surprised it will be a China-centric world in which countries revolve around China for all kinds of this thing. But
Okay.
China is also playing its cards very reasonably. It is not behaving like a hegemon, a dying hegemon, which the America has all along been. It's
True.
America, the empire had its different phases. So China is certainly playing its cards very well at this point of time. We don't know what all will happen in the course of the
So
time.
Ravi, we are running out of time. So we just got
Yes.
30 seconds, 40 seconds left. So tell me, what do you anticipate? When will India get a reasonable agreement in the next 6 months? Will it get it at all? Where are we headed? What's your intuitive sense? Just give me that. Just 30 seconds. Yeah.
Yeah, my intuitive, I mean, I generally feel that we are unlikely to get a deal which will help us, a deal in which we give much more market access, a deal in which we ensure that our 44 billion trade surplus is reduced to some 20 or even below 20 billion, a deal that will severely affect India's core industries like steel, aluminium, and all. A deal that will definitely undermine India's agriculture, even though something may not happen on agriculture at this point of time.
Yeah.
But with the Americans, once you
Yeah.
open the door, it
Yeah.
doesn't stop there. It gradually, proceeds. They may have
And pharma sector?
some
Yeah.
so even in the textiles and all, you constantly compare that their tariffs is 20%, our tariffs are going to come below that. Nonsense. I mean, in the textile sector, India has a long way to go in establishing its, once upon a time it had a major share, but today you have the Vietnams and the Bangladeshes
What
and
about
the Laos.
pharma sector? Pharma sector?
Farmer sector is going to be worst affected because we have around 14 to 15 billion of trade surplus with the export or generic drugs. Now, the generic drugs has different categories, but in the category that these guys are now, the Trump administration is going to come soon with a high tariff on pharmaceuticals, like what it did with steel, aluminium, and motor parts,
You're
autos, and
sure about this? Trump will come with the high tariffs, or it's many of them?
absolutely. On pharmaceuticals, it's any day. He's been waiting. I don't know for the reasons we don't know, but he has made very serious and repeated announcements on this issue.
Yeah. Thank you, Ravi, for talking to us. We'll continue this conversation in the
Yeah.
future, because uh, a resolution of Trump tariffs with the rest of the world is nowhere in sight. So we'll have ample opportunities to keep talking about this. We will meet again. Thank you, Ravi.
Yeah. Thank you, Venu. Thank you for the wire.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.